What the is going on with the OKC Thunder? It all started with their NBA Cup loss to the Spurs. Before then, the Thunder looked unstoppable, but then that one loss turned into two more against the Spurs, along with one against the Timberwolves and one against the Phoenix Suns. And then just last night, they lost by almost 30 points to the 13-win Charlotte Hornets. So what exactly is going on with this team, and why has a team that looked unbeatable all of a sudden look human again? But before we get into this video, if you guys enjoy this type of content, please make sure to smash that like button on this video. I would so much appreciate it. And if you guys get to the end of this video and decide, you want to stick around, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to build up my community of people who love the NBA, and each one of you just taking a quick second out of your day to hit that subscribe button makes that so much easier. Also, make sure to comment down below what you think the OKC Thunder's main issue is right now in this rough stretch. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Let's get into the video. To call the OKC Thunder's early season stretch anything other than dominance would be the understatement of a lifetime. The Thunder had a top 3 offense, but also a defense that was far and above better than any other team in the league by a wide margin. Shai looked like he was well on his way to winning his second MVP. Chet looked like a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And they were beating teams so goddamn badly that their starters most of the time were not even playing in the fourth quarter. This team was 24-1 at one point on a 16-game win streak. But then all of a sudden something changed after they lost to the Spurs that night of the NBA Cup. The OKC Thunder went from looking like one of potentially the greatest teams in NBA history to looking like the team that I play on down at the local YMCA for Wednesday Night Rec League. As I said before, last night the Thunder ended up losing to the Charlotte Hornets by almost 30 points. And so now that marks, in the last 12-game stretch, a record of 6 wins and 6 losses for the OKC Thunder. What exactly is happening all of a sudden? Because looking at advanced stats, I don't really see anything that jumps out at me. OKC, well, they're not a top 3 offense in the league anymore. They are a top 5 offense in the league, and their defensive rating is still far and above better than every other team in the NBA. Shai, night in and night out, looks elite like always. But the Thunder's supporting cast, for some reason, kind of hasn't impressed me as much this season as they did last season. And one of those guys that I think a lot of other teams are starting to key on is Chet Holmgren. A lot of opponents are starting to get a lot more physical with him, and I think that's most evident in the 3 games that OKC played San Antonio, because it's not a secret around the league that Wemby doesn't really like Chet. They have some sort of beef. As much as Chet wants to deflect and say, it's just competitiveness, Wemby genuinely seems to not like Chet. And that causes Wemby to play Chet Holmgren very hard and very physical. And you can tell in those games that type of physical play kind of really causes Chet to get out of the game and really not perform to what he's capable of doing. In his first game against San Antonio, he had 17 points, but on 37% from the field. And then in his second and third games, he's had just 7 and 10 points. And I think Wemby kind of exposed Chet to all the other teams around the league because, teams, of course, are watching film every single day, trying to get the edge on each other. And when NBA teams see Wembanyama, a very tall, but again, not the biggest guy out there, really muscle up and bully Chet, a lot of NBA teams are going to be like, hey, let's make him uncomfortable with a lot of our bigger, centers in the league. I think of guys like Ivica Zubac and Jalen Duren, just absolute big body forces down low. They're seeing if Wemby can do that to Chet, what can those guys do to Chet? Now, with all the problems that, Chet has had with his physicality and everything, I think another main reason why the Thunder are having such a rough stretch is the play of their number 2 guy, Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams has struggled offensively a lot in this last 12-game stretch, and it almost looks like he is like the key reason why the Thunder are losing each game that they're losing, because in almost every single one of the 6 losses in this stretch, Jalen Williams has shot the ball very, very badly. Last game against the Charlotte Hornets, he shot 42%. The loss before that in Phoenix, he shot 69%. Nice. But then in the 4 losses before that, he shot 38%, 44%, 37%, and 31%. And so when you have a guy who is your second option and is getting up the second highest volume of shots pretty much every game that you play behind Shai, if he's not making those shots, it hurts you a lot more than if he was like a role player, that was only getting a handful, let's say 6 or 7 shots a game. You think of other players outside of the big 3 like Lou Dort. In almost every single one of these losses, he is not shooting well from the 3-point line. Guys like Isaiah Joe, he's been really streaky in these last couple weeks when it comes to his 3-point shooting. Alex Caruso is another one who, in every single one of the Thunder's losses in this last stretch, again, has not shot the ball well at all. And so when your role players aren't hitting 3-pointers, all of a sudden the defense collapses a lot. In a player like Shai, who likes to probe the defense a lot, get inside and try and get his buckets within the painted area, all of a sudden that gets a lot harder when you have defenses more willing to collapse in on you. And I think right there is the issue, because while I've said Shai has been mostly elite for this entire season, even his shooting percentages are kind of regressing right now in this bad stretch. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because he's getting a lot more attention when he drives. NBA teams see that players like Jalen Williams and Isaiah Joe and Lou Dort and Caruso aren't really hitting their threes right now. We're going to give them more shots to, make them prove that they can hit at a consistent rate, or else we're just going to collapse on Shai every time. And the reason why I kind of relate and empathize with the Thunder and Thunder fans right now, I know, empathizing with the top team in the West, boo-hoo them, they have it so bad, but it's because I had to watch the same thing with the Detroit Pistons 2 seasons ago. Cade Cunningham was a great player 2 seasons ago, obviously not as good as he is now, but still a very good NBA player, but you never got to see that because the Pistons built one of the worst shooting teams around him I've ever seen. And so anytime he would drive into the lane, there would immediately be 3, 4, sometimes even all 5 defenders collapse in on him and, strip the ball from him or block his shot or make the shot really hard for him to make. And so I know firsthand from experience how hard it can be for your primary probing ball handler to get theirs when everybody else on the team isn't shooting well. Another thing is, as much as you don't want to believe it because of how dominant they've been the last, 2, 3, 4 seasons, the Thunder are still a young team. They've built up from the draft, and a lot of these guys are, only like 4 or 5 years into their career, if even that. And young teams hit walls every once in a while. That's what makes the best battle-hardened teams great, is they've gotten through adversity. And this just seems like some adversity for the Thunder. Not to mention that a lot of the teams that the OKC Thunder have lost to, they've lost 3 times to the San Antonio Spurs. So a lot of the teams that they've lost to are teams that have played them before. And so teams are obviously going to make adjustments in their second, third, fourth time playing a team, as opposed to the first time playing them all season. And so the Thunder just kind of have to adjust and be like, teams are starting to key in on our offense. We need to be able to be moldable, to be flexible, and, try new things, because a lot of these teams we've already played a couple times, they're starting to figure us out. And unfortunately for the rest of NBA fans, I'm not going to stand up here and be like, the Thunder are frauds. They suck, guys. They suck. We all have a chance this year. Because, like I said, their net rating is still elite. they're a young team that is still learning and have a ton of guys that still have a ton of room to get better, not only from season to season, but just even in this season. And lastly, slumps happen to every single contender. You know, there's not a contender out there that hasn't gone through a slump in the season that, you know, they won the championship. And when you think about it, even the 73-9 Warriors went through a slump. Unfortunately, that slump was in the NBA Finals where they ended up losing. It's very rare that a team is completely dominant for an entire season. That's why that record of 73-9 from the Warriors, and then before that, it was 72-10 from the Bulls like 35 years ago. It's because to be that dominant for an entire season is a very hard thing to do. And I'm acting like, you know, the Thunder are like all of a sudden they suck. No, the Thunder are still the best team in the NBA. Even going 6-6 in their last 12 games, they are still the best team in the NBA. But I do think that this stretch has shown some weaknesses when it comes to the Thunder's lineup. And that boils down to some physicality issues when it comes to Chet. I think, you know, bro needs to go on a bulk and put some meat on your bones, man. Come on. And then the main thing is the lack of half-court creation outside of SGA. The Thunder don't really have many players that can get the ball down on the deck and drive and kick and initiate and probe outside of SGA. They've kind of built their team around him having shooters on the outside and then him initiate offense. But that's the thing, is when, you know, you have a night where SGA is off, you don't have anybody else to, you know, initiate that offense and kind of get their own shot. But then on the flip side, when you have shooters that are having a rough, you know, week or a rough couple weeks, that makes it even harder for your initiator to get his own shot, because teams are going to be more willing to collapse on him inside. This slump doesn't mean that the Thunder are frauds. It just kind of means that the rest of the league is caught up to them. And so the real question is, can the OKC Thunder, you know, kind of adjust and bounce back from this? But that's all I really had to say on the topic. When I saw that the Thunder lost to the Charlotte Hornets the other night, and then I kind of saw just how rough they've been in this stretch, I thought, you know, I had to make a video on this because this team that we once thought was dominant, all of a sudden, like, are losing a lot. And so if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys enjoyed my breakdown of the Thunder, please make sure to hit that like button. And again, if you guys liked it enough to want to stick around, please hit that subscribe button. I would very much appreciate it. Also, make sure to comment down below if I forgot anything, or if you have something else that you think is causing the Thunder to have this rough stretch. I love to read and react and debate with every single comment that anybody leaves on my videos. It's super fun for me. It's the reason why I do this. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace and love.